The air hung heavy with the smell of sweat and anticipation. The roar of the crowd was deafening. In the heart of Mexico City, the Rodriguez family name was synonymous with boxing. For generations, they had battled their way to fame, their fists a testament to their grit and determination. The patriarch, Miguel Rodriguez, was a legend in his own right. His thunderous punches had earned him the heavyweight championship title not once, but 3 times. His victories were celebrated with a fervor bordering on religious ecstasy. Miguel was more than just a boxer, he was a national hero. Miguel's retirement did little to diminish the family's passion for the sport. His sons followed in his footsteps, their every move scrutinized by a public eager for another champion. The Rodriguez legacy lived on, a potent cocktail of triumph and tragedy.
I want to be just like Grandpa.
Among Miguel's grandchildren, young Rash stood out. Born with his grandfather's fiery eyes and a fighter's spirit, Rash was destined for the ring. At the tender age of 5, he was already mimicking his father's moves, his tiny fists pounding against a makeshift punching bag. Rash was a whirlwind of energy, a force of nature that both captivated and terrified. He possessed an unnerving intensity, a gaze that seemed to burn with an inner fire. His temper was as legendary as his lineage, erupting in violent outbursts that left those around him shaken. Despite his volatile nature, Rash was fiercely loyal to those he loved. He adored his grandfather, hanging on to his every word as the old champion regaled him with tales of past victories. In the boxing ring, Rash found an outlet for his aggression, a way to channel the storm that raged within him. There was a darkness that lurked beneath Rash's cheerful facade, a simmering rage that hinted at something more sinister. His classmates steered clear, intimidated by his unpredictable outbursts. Teachers whispered their concerns, noting the boy's quick temper and propensity for violence. Even his family, accustomed to the rough world of boxing, recognized that Rash's anger was different. It was as if he were possessed by a primal fury, a force that he himself couldn't control. His parents, torn between pride and fear, tried to discipline him, to temper his rage with love and understanding, but their efforts seemed to have little effect. As Rash grew older, his violent outbursts became more frequent, more intense. He lashed out at anyone who crossed him, leaving a trail of bruises and broken toys in his wake. The darkness within him festered, threatening to consume the last vestiges of the innocent child he once was. April 5, 1990, dawned bright and clear, the promise of spring hanging in the air. It was a day for new beginnings, for adventure and camaraderie. For the students of Escuela Primaria Benito Juarez, it was the start of their annual camping trip, a chance to escape the confines of the classroom and embrace the great outdoors. Excitement rippled through the group as they piled onto the bus, their backpacks overflowing with snacks and anticipation. Rash, his usual scowl replaced by a rare smile, chatted excitedly with his 2 best friends, Marco and Luis. For a brief moment, the darkness that clung to him seemed to recede, replaced by the carefree joy of childhood. The bus deposited them at the edge of a sprawling forest, its emerald canopy stretching as far as the eye could see. Laughter echoed through the trees as the children raced to set up camp, their voices a symphony of youthful exuberance. The teachers, weary from the long journey, smiled indulgently, their hearts warmed by the children's infectious enthusiasm. The day passed in a blur of activity. The children, their faces flushed with excitement, participated in games, sang songs, and told stories around the crackling campfire.
Come on, everyone. Let's explore deeper into the forest.
As evening approached, they gathered around the campfire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames.
All right, kids, it's time to settle down and enjoy some marshmallows.
For a few precious hours, the cares of the world seemed to fade away, replaced by the simple joys of childhood. An argument erupted, sparked by a careless remark fueled by years of simmering resentment.
What did you just say, Marco?
Rash, his eyes blazing with fury, lashed out at Marco, his fist connecting with his friend's jaw.
Stay out of this, Luis.
The other children watched in stunned silence as Rash continued to rain blows upon his former friends. The teachers rushed to the scene.
Someone call an ambulance, quickly!
The ambulance arrived, its siren wailing a mournful lament through the stillness of the night. The injured boys were loaded onto stretchers, their faces ashen, their bodies still.
What have I done?
Rash, his rage spent, watched in silence, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. As the ambulance sped away, carrying its precious cargo towards the distant lights of the city, a heavy silence descended upon the campsite.
How could this happen? We need to keep the children calm. The teachers, their faces etched with shock and grief, struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had transpired. The children, their innocence shattered, huddled together, their eyes wide with fear.
The magic of the camping trip had been irrevocably broken. The laughter and joy that had filled the forest only hours earlier were replaced by a chilling silence, a silence pregnant with the weight of tragedy and the bitter knowledge of lives forever changed. The next morning dawned cold and gray, the forest draped in a shroud of mist. The remaining campers, their faces drawn and pale, packed their belongings in silence, their youthful exuberance replaced by a somber solemnity. The weight of the previous night's events hung heavy in the air, a palpable reminder of the fragility of life.
As they prepared to depart, a group of children stumbled upon a gruesome discovery. Hidden beneath a tangle of bushes lay the lifeless bodies of Marco and Luis. Their faces, frozen in an eternal rictus of pain, bore testament to the brutality of their demise.
The news of their deaths spread through the campsite like wildfire, igniting a fresh wave of grief and horror. The teachers, their faces ashen, tried to shield the children from the gruesome sight, but the truth was impossible to conceal. The idyllic camping trip had transformed into a nightmare, a stark reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their world. The tragic events at the campsite sent shockwaves through the community. Parents, their hearts heavy with grief and disbelief, struggled to comprehend how such a senseless tragedy could have befallen their children. The school, once a symbol of hope and promise, became a place of mourning, its halls echoing with the sound of hushed whispers and stifled sobs.
Rash, his face pale and drawn, became the focal point of the town's collective grief and anger. Whispers followed him like a shadow, painting him as a monster, a demon in disguise. His violent outbursts, once dismissed as childish tantrums, were now viewed through a more sinister lens.
The police, under intense pressure to bring those responsible to justice, focused their investigation on Rash. His history of violence, coupled with the eyewitness accounts of his friends' final moments, painted a damning picture. Despite his tender age, Rash was arrested and charged with murder. The trial of Rash Rodriguez sent shockwaves through the nation. The courtroom became a battleground of emotions, as the prosecution painted a chilling portrait of a cold-blooded killer, a child devoid of remorse or empathy. They pointed to his history of violence, his cold demeanor in the aftermath of the tragedy as evidence of his guilt.
The defense, meanwhile, argued that Rash was a victim of circumstance, a troubled child failed by a system ill-equipped to address his needs. They pleaded with the jury to show leniency, to recognize that a child, even one capable of great violence, was not beyond redemption.
But the tide of public opinion had already turned against Rash. The image of the innocent victims, their lives cut tragically short, was seared into the collective consciousness of the nation. The jury, swayed by the emotional pleas of the prosecution and the weight of public sentiment, reached a verdict that would forever alter the course of Rash's life.
Rash Rodriguez, a child of 7, became the youngest person in Mexican history to be sentenced to life behind bars. His future, once bright with the promise of a boxing career, was extinguished in a single devastating moment. Guilty. Rash stared blankly ahead as the judge sentenced him to life in prison.
The story of Rash Rodriguez is a tragedy on many levels. It is a story of a society grappling with the limits of justice and the enduring power of fear.